The first phone call doesn't come from a bank. It comes from your cousin. You haven't even told most of your family yet, and somehow they already know. Word travels through families at a speed that has nothing to do with how discreet you thought you were being. And the first question almost nobody asks is, how did you do it? The first question is some version of, can I borrow some? Welcome to the most isolating financial milestone almost nobody warns you about, becoming the first millionaire in your family. Here's the number that should make this feel like pure celebration. Roughly 8 out of 10 millionaires are self-made, not inherited, not born into it. First generation, just like you're about to become. But that statistic hides the part nobody puts on the motivational poster. Being the first person in your family to cross this line doesn't just change your bank account. It changes your role in the family itself, permanently, whether you agreed to that or not. At first, it feels like triumph. Your parents tell the story at every family gathering. Your name comes up in conversations you're not even part of. For a few weeks, you are, quite literally, the family's proudest achievement. Then the requests start. Here's how it actually escalates, and it rarely announces itself as a request for money at first. It starts small. A cousin needs help with a car repair, just this once. An aunt mentions almost in passing that she's a little behind on rent this month. Your brother pitches you a business opportunity that sounds suspiciously like a hobby with a spreadsheet attached. Each one, on its own, seems reasonable, small enough that saying no would feel pettier than saying yes, which is exactly why nobody ever pushes back on the first one, or the second, or even the fifth. That's the trap. Researchers who study sudden wealth call this dynamic financial enmeshment, when a family stops treating your money as yours and starts treating it as a shared family resource you happen to be holding on to. Then the numbers stop being small. Studies on lottery winners, a different windfall but the same psychological collision, found that more than half go broke within 5 years, and the single biggest reason isn't bad investing, it's family. Adult relatives start expecting help with houses, cars, and businesses. Siblings quietly compare who received more. Extended family members you haven't spoken to in years suddenly reappear with a story and a number attached. You become, in the blunt words of researchers who study this exact phenomenon, the family ATM. And every withdrawal creates an expectation for the next one. Here's the part that actually breaks relationships, and it isn't the requests themselves, it's what happens the first time you say no. Because you will say no, eventually. And the moment you do, the same family that celebrated your success starts describing it differently. You're not hardworking anymore. You're different now. You're acting like you're better than us. The success that made you the family's proudest achievement becomes, in the exact same breath, the evidence used against you. You didn't change, the math did, and suddenly you're the villain in a story where the only thing you actually did was keep what you earned. Now, you might be thinking, this is a modern problem, born from modern envy and social media comparison. It isn't. And to understand exactly how far back this pattern goes, and how badly it can end if you never confront it, it's worth leaving your own family for a moment and looking at what happens when this exact dynamic is left completely unmanaged for over a century. Because the uncomfortable truth is that the tension you're feeling right now, at the very start of your wealth, is the same unresolved pattern that has quietly destroyed almost every family fortune in modern history. You're just experiencing it a generation earlier than most people ever have to, as the one who built the money instead of the one who simply inherited it. Look no further than the Vanderbilts. Cornelius Vanderbilt built a shipping and railroad empire worth roughly $200 billion in today's money, one of the largest personal fortunes in American history. He was also, by every account, the original version of exactly what you're becoming right now, the first in his family to build something enormous from nothing. Within 3 generations, it was gone. Not stolen, not taxed away, spent, fought over, and quietly dissolved by a family that never learned how to talk honestly about what they had. At a family reunion in 1973, 120 Vanderbilt descendants showed up. Not one of them was a millionaire. So what actually determines whether this destroys your relationships or doesn't? Not the amount of money, not even the number of requests. Research on family wealth transitions keeps circling back to the same single variable, whether the family can have an honest conversation about money before resentment sets in, instead of after. Families that talk openly about limits, expectations, and boundaries early tend to keep both the relationships and the wealth. Families that avoid the conversation because it feels rude or ungrateful or awkward tend to eventually lose one or both. You don't get to control whether your family asks. You only get to control whether you answer with a clear boundary or with guilt-driven silence that turns into resentment on both sides 6 months later. Here's the twist almost nobody expects going into this. The money was never actually the hard part. Earning it was the hard part you already solved. The actual challenge, the one nobody trains you for, is becoming the first person in your family's history to hold something everyone else in the room has a claim on, real or imagined, and figuring out how to be generous without being consumed and firm without being called cold. So if you're actually facing this right now, here's the one boundary that separates the families who keep both the money and each other from the ones who lose both. Decide your number before anyone asks, not after. Pick a fixed amount or a fixed percentage that you're genuinely willing to give as a gift, not a loan you'll quietly resent chasing later, and decide it while you're calm before the first phone call catches you off guard. Say it out loud to your closest family member once, clearly, the same way you'd announce any other decision that isn't up for renegotiation. The families who avoid the Vanderbilt ending aren't the ones who give the most. They're the ones who decided the number early enough that nobody could catch them improvising. And maybe that's the real, uncomfortable lesson hiding inside this milestone. We tend to imagine that money problems start when you don't have enough. For the first millionaire in any family, the harder problems start the moment you do, and the families who make it through are the ones who talked about it before the money did the talking for them. If you want to see exactly how this plays out at scale, where billionaires, not just millionaires, quietly lose everything to the exact same family dynamics, that's next.